I said, here's a $10 billion lawsuit.
$10 billion?
It's insane.
There we go. This is my, I don't have a band. They just turned the lights on. Welcome to Howie Mandel Does Stuff. I'm Howie Mandel. My daughter Jackie couldn't be here today because she bought a hamster.
Wow.
I don't even know what that means. But I'm so excited.
I lost out to the hamster. Okay.
But it's you and me, buddy.
I love it.
Byron Allen, entrepreneur, billionaire, owner of the Weather Channel, comedy writer, I don't know what else, family man. Just you've checked so many boxes. I don't know if people know my history with Byron, but when I moved out here in the 70s, Byron was kind of the youngest kid to be playing at the Comedy Store at the time. Were you not I remember you standing there. You'd have your material and homework all under your arm. Did you?
Yeah.
Or you had to run home to go do homework?
I was staying. I was standing in the back of the Comedy Store. I started there in summer of 75. I was 14 years old. And what year did you come out?
77.
77. So I met you 2 years after I started. And I remember meeting you back in the parking lot. And you were so nice, and you were just like, you too were a kid. And you said, I'm from Canada. And I go, what do you do? You said, I'm in the floor covering business.
Yep, carpets.
And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, I want to be a comedian. And I remember meeting you, and it was like the conversation was yesterday. This was 1977.
Yeah.
And you said, I'm giving it up. You said, my family's in the floor covering business.
No, they weren't. I was.
You were?
Yeah, no, I got thrown out of school. I was.
You started it.
Yeah, mine, yeah. It was never an empire. It's not like, it's not even anything. It's not even a shadow of anything that you are involved with today.
So I didn't realize you owned it because you were so young. I thought your family had started it.
What I loved about you, and this is, I felt a kinship to you because even at that time, I never met somebody that young that was into, for lack of a better term, sales. You know, and whether it was selling your material or selling yourself, because you were in a place where you shouldn't have been. There's not that the Comedy Store is not a place where a 14-year-old kid, you know, is making his way. But not only was he making his way at the Comedy Store, you were sitting with the likes of Jay Leno and
David Letterman
and Robin Williams, and they would sit in a room together in a shitty apartment on Sunset, and you were included in that group to write.
Yeah, you know,
for JJ.
Robin wasn't there at the time, so my mother, you know, she got pregnant with me when she was 16, had me 17 days after her 17th birthday, and thank God my mother is not only, you know, beautiful, she's brilliant. So we came out from Detroit when in summer of 68 for a 2-week vacation. And she ended up getting into UCLA and getting her master's degree at UCLA in cinema television production. And because she had gotten her master's degree in cinema TV production from UCLA, she was able to go around town and ask for jobs. And everyone said, no. A lot of doors closed. And finally, she went to NBC. And she said, may I please have a job? And they said, no, we do not have a job here for you. And she asked a terrific question. She said, do you have an intern program where I can work for free? And they said, no, we do not. And then she asked a question that changed our lives forever. She said, will you please start one with me? And they said, yes.
Oh, my God.
And so she got a job.
Wait, your mother is the first NBC intern ever?
Paige, right?
Paige.
She was one of the first interns. She was the first intern, and then as an intern working for free, she was able to get a job as a page.
But a
page is to give a tour. She gave tours of the studio.
Right. And people know them now because if you've watched on the Tonight Show or those people that wear the Navy jacket, sports jacket, and they sometimes use them on the air. But more importantly,
that was my mom in 74.
But more importantly, the people that got into that program that your mother invented ended up being becoming the presidents of those studios. And,
Yes.
you know, because people moved up from intern to page, from page to producer, from producer to president, to head of development, to head of
The network and head of the studio.
I won't bore people at home with who these people are, but a lot of people that you see on television, or the people that are making decisions for what you see on television, are people that came from this program, and I had no idea until right now that was started based on a question from your mother.
That's exactly right. And this was because she's a single mom. We're worried about putting food on the table. We're worried about keeping a roof over our house. She's a single mom. She was a teenage mom, and we're coming out of Detroit. And so she's like, hey, I've heard enough no's. How about a yes? Well, I'll work for free. How about that? And got a yes. And she converted that to becoming a tour guide, a page. And she gave tours, and she could not afford, childcare. So I went to work with her. And so she's got this little boy with her who's trying to, not get in trouble and stay quiet and don't get in the way. So I became like wallpaper. And I just kind of leaned up against the wall and I watched everything.
In the halls of NBC in the
Burbank.
late 60s, early 70s?
No, mid-70s.
Mid-70s.
Yeah, so I would go from studio to studio waiting for my mom to get off work. So I would go watch Red Fox tape Sanford and Son.
Wow.
And then I loved Red Fox. He was amazing. Red Fox, he would talk to me like I was his best friend. I'm like 13, 14 years old. And he would see me, how you doing? Hey, come here, kid. Here, you want some? And he pulled out a wad of cash, like so thick. He goes, you want some cabbage? You want some cabbage? And he peeled off like 20, 40 bucks. He goes, here, go buy your mama something nice. You only get one mama. I never forgot that. Red Fox. And I would watch him tape his show. And I was so blown away by him and how brilliant he was and how funny he was. And then I walk across the hall and then I go watch Freddie Prinze and Jack Albertson tape Cheek on the Man. And then I would go watch Johnny Carson tape The Tonight Show. Then I go down the hall and I would watch Flip Wilson do the Flip Wilson Show with a young comedian named Richard Pryor. And I would watch I watched George Burns do his specials and Bob Hope and Dean Martin. And I was just going from studio to studio to studio. And I was like a kid.
I cannot believe that you were experiencing that, because as a kid who grew up in Canada, and I would imagine this goes for anybody anywhere in the world at that time, this was our staple. This was our pop culture. This was what we lived, ate, and breathed. This is what we talked about when we went to school the next day. In fact, so much so that you're looking at the little 13-year-old Byron probably walked by these seats that I have in my...
I love those.
Those are the front row
of The Tonight Show.
And this is the light that's shined down on...
I love it.
Johnny's.
I love it. And that studio, that Johnny did The Tonight Show in,
right,
it was built for Bob Hope.
Right.
So Bob Hope, because most of the television studios, they have a pit. And so what Bob Hope didn't like is when he hit his mark, he would look down, because comedians play the people.
Right.
Right? So the people are sitting in the pit. So Bob Hope, his eyes were looking down at the audience in the pit. And he said, look, television, you have to open your eyes. You have to let people see your eyes. You have to look up. So he built this stadium seating where it rakes up. It's one of the first TV studios, and probably one of the only for a long time, where the stadium seating raked up.
You're right.
And it forced Bob Hope to look up at the people and open his eyes.
Well, look up at his cue cards.
And look, right. So, look at his cue. So, and then Johnny Carson used the studio for his monologue, because Johnny was all about his monologue. And the deal was Johnny would tape his show from 5:30 to 6:30. And then they would ask the audience, stick around for about 15 minutes, and Bob Hope would bring his curtain down. They bring Johnny's curtain up, Bob's curtain down, new curtains, and Bob would stand there in front of Johnny's audience after he taped a show and tape his monologue for his specials that he did once a quarter.
So you grow up a little bit, you start doing stand-up comedy, you're writing, you get on TV. You did The Tonight Show. Are you the youngest person to do? Because at that time, doing The Tonight Show, which is, now you can get discovered on any platform that kind of exists, or you can be lost on any platform that exists. But if you got on The Tonight Show as a comedian, Your life was never the same again.
Oh my goodness, you're so right. I mean, listen, so my mom is giving tours and I'm walking around and I'm watching an unknown sportscaster do the sports, Bryant Gumbel for KMBC.
Right.
And the weatherman, Pat Sajak for KMBC. And I'm going to the game shows and I'm going to the soap operas. And Gladys Knight and the Pips had a summer show. And they had a comedian on the show. And he was funny and he did a routine about high school and sweat hogs. And he said, and watch my sitcom starting this fall. I knock on his door and I say, sir, I want to be a comedian just like you. What should I do?
Who was this?
He says, you should go to the Comedy Store. And I said, thank you. And I said, I'm sorry, what's the name of the sitcom you're going to have on in a couple of months? He said, Welcome Back, Kotter. It was Gabe Kaplan.
Wow.
So he said, go to the Comedy Store. So I called the Comedy Store. I'm thinking you call the Comedy Store to buy your first set of jokes.
That's a comedy
store. It's a comedy store. I'm thinking, okay, it's like, and so I called the guy, he goes, Comedy Store. And I go, do you, like, how much do the jokes cost to buy? Like, do I buy the jokes? Is it like a supermarket? Is there an aisle for sight gags? And the guy is listening to me. I'm so happy he didn't hang up on me. He says, what are you talking about? It's not a supermarket where you buy jokes. It's a comedy club where you perform. I go, yes, that's what I want to do. He says, okay, we have Monday night tryout nights. It's called Potluck. And I recommend you get here early because people line up early to sign up to perform. And I said, what time do you open? He said, we open the doors at 7 o'clock. I said, no problem, 7 p.m. I will be there early. So I took the bus and I got there at 9 a.m. So I'm thinking this should be early enough. I'll be first in line. So I got there on Sunset and I'm sitting on the curb. I'm probably 14 years old at this point, and I'm just writing jokes. And I'm writing jokes all day, waiting for them to open the front door so I can sign up and go on stage and perform. So the front door opens and Mitzi is at the front door and she's signing people in. And she's not looking up. She's just kind of looking down. What's your name? And here's your drink tickets. You got 2 drink tickets. And I walk up and she goes, what's your name? I said, Byron. I'm 14. And she goes, and she looks up and she goes, how old are you? I said, I'm 14. She goes, you can't be in here. I'm going to lose my liquor license. And I was like, oh. And I turned to start to walk away. Because I'm thinking, okay, I'll come back, in 7 years, in 21 years, when I'm 21 years old. And she goes, wait. She goes, you stay in the back. You stay in the parking lot. And she goes, I'm going to give you 2 drink tickets. And don't you dare buy any alcohol with it. And I go, I don't drink alcohol, ma'am. I don't drink alcohol. She goes, all right, you can get some water and some soda. Water and soda, ma'am, no problem. She goes, just stand in the parking lot and I'll send somebody for you. And I go, no problem, ma'am. I'll be in the parking lot waiting for you. I'll just be right in the parking lot. And then I would just stand up. I wouldn't lean on anybody's car. I just stood there, like straight up, right? And then finally, this guy comes to me like an hour later or whatever. He goes, Mitzi's ready for you to go on stage. I go, thank you. And I walk in and there's about, it's, the Comedy Store original room. No, at this point, I'm like one of the first or second up. It's 4 people and 200 chairs. So 4 people and 200 chairs. And I go, okay, I've got to figure out how to make these chairs laugh. Or this lady is never letting me come back in her club. I'm already a risk to her alcohol license. So I said, okay, let's do it. So I go on stage, I hit the mark, I do my routine, and my routine were jokes that I had written for a spec script for Sanford and Son. I wrote a spec script for Sanford and Son, and I gave it to the producers, and they went, whoa, who wrote this? I said, I wrote this. They go, wow, this is funny. They said, we're not going to buy this script, but we are having a hard time understanding how a 14-year-old kid could do this story and write these jokes. I go, I just love I said, I love Red Fox, I love Sanford and Son, and this was just an idea I had. They said, keep writing. So I took the jokes I had written for that script to create my first monologue. And that was what I did at the Comedy Store.
Do you remember any of those jokes?
Oh my God. It was Red Fox he thought Aunt Esther was dying, and so he started being nice to her.
Right.
And he even kissed her.
Right.
And then he found out he had misheard and she wasn't dying, and then he was upset.
Right.
And then he's just went into his whole thing about how he couldn't stand her anymore. I don't even remember the jokes, but I remember having fun with it.
Right.
And then I got off stage, and this guy walks up to me, and he goes, "Whoa." He goes, "Who wrote those jokes?" I said, "I did." He goes, "Those were funny." He goes, "Listen, I know somebody may want to write with you. Can I get your phone number?" I said, "Sure, here's my phone number." And I forgot I'd even given him my phone number. And I get a call a week or two later, and this guy calls me up. He goes, "Can I speak to Byron?" I go, "Yeah, this is Byron." He goes, "This is Jimmy J.J. Walker." He's the hottest comic on the planet. Dynamite. This is he's got the #1 sitcom, Good Times. Everybody's doing Dynamite. He says, "My man, Wayne Klein." That's who came up to me. He goes, "My man, Wayne Klein, says you're funny. And if my man, Wayne Klein, says you're funny, then you must be funny." And I said, "Oh, tell Wayne I said hello and thank you." He goes, "Yeah, Wayne, he's sitting here with me and my writing guys." He goes, "Wayne," Byron says hello. "So listen," he goes, "do you want to come over here and write with me and my boys?" And I go, "Oh, okay, let me ask my mom." So then I hear Jimmy go, "Oh my God, he's got to ask his mom." And then I heard this dude in the background say, "Tell his mom not to worry, we'll have cookies and milk for him." And then Jimmy said, "Dave, be nice, right?" So my mother says, "Yeah, you can go over to Jimmy's apartment and you can write with his writing team." So she drops me off on a Tuesday night at 7:30 at his apartment, which was about 2 or 3 blocks from the Comedy Store. I'm 14. I walk in, and sitting there is Wayne Klein, obviously Jimmy Walker. It's his place. Jay Leno, who was sleeping in his car off the 405. Wow. David Letterman, who was literally sleeping in a closet across the street from the Comedy Store, and he had just driven out from Indianapolis in a red or an orange pickup truck.
He was a weatherman.
He was a weatherman at Wish in Indianapolis. He didn't think he was going to make it, so he drove out so he could drive back. He thought he was going to turn the car back around, the pickup truck, and he stood out. Okay, orange, red pickup truck in L.A. on Sunset. And Marty Nadler, who went on to write and produce Laverne and Shirley and Happy Days, and Jeff Stein and Wayne Dugan, a lot of amazing writers.
But Leno and Letterman and JJ and this kid.
And we're in Jimmy's apartment, and Leno and Letterman were getting $200 a week. And at one point, Jimmy Walker managed all of us. He managed us. He used to manage... He and his partner, he and his managing partner managed Jay Leno, David Letterman, me, all of us. And Jimmy was saying, "Look, you don't want to be a comedian, be a writer." And at one point had convinced David Letterman to be a comedy writer and not a performer. And David was miserable. And he was like, "Okay, I can't handle this anymore." And David wanted to get out of his contract, his management contract, and pursue his dream of being in front of the camera. Leno went to Walker to get Letterman out of his contract so Letterman could go and pursue being in front of the camera. It's pretty amazing, the story. So they were getting $200 a week, and I was getting $25 a joke. And so I sold my first joke to...
So all you needed was 8 jokes
and
9 jokes to beat them.
To beat them. And that's what he told me. That's what Walker said. You know, I said, I remember asking Jimmy, "Can I get $200 a week like Leno and Letterman?" He said, No. He goes, "You can get paid more than them." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Just write me 10 jokes. You'll get $250. I said, "Okay." So I was living at home, so they weren't going to pay me, right? And I had a paper route. My job before this was a paper route. I was throwing the Los Angeles Herald Examiner, and I had to throw 2 newspapers to make a penny. And I couldn't wait until Sundays because they paid me 3 pennies to throw the Sunday paper because it was bigger. So
when you tell these stories, and these are fascinating stories and historical stories as far as the names that you got to work with and the things that happened, do you sit there today and go, I cannot believe, I mean, you own the Weather Channel. You have 50 stations.
Look, I'm blessed. This is America. How great is America? When you are born in 1961 without civil rights to a black teenage girl that's 16 years old, education is everything. The opportunities in this country are abundant. It's not how you start, it's how you decide to create your life, your masterpiece, and how you decide to live your life. We literally started with nothing.
Okay, we're in a commercial now. Kenny, I told you don't adjust the seats. You adjusted the seats. Don't say no, you didn't. Anyway, this is for one of our favorite sponsors, Raycon. And Raycon, can they even see it? I feel
you want
like
me to hold it?
Yeah, because I think he lowered my seat. Okay, talk about it.
All right. Well, I love Raycon. We've talked about it before.
Because you got great quality for good prices.
No, but I wanted to tell you why I use it, especially in the fall now that the kids are back at school and I'm home and I'm doing cleaning around the house even more.
Right.
While the kids are at school, I'm doing all the cooking for their lunches and everything. I'm always listening to music and podcasts like our podcast. So I always listen on my Raycons, and it's great quality, fits into my ears really well. And obviously, like we said, a great price. You don't have to break the bank. You okay?
I don't know. My seat doesn't feel comfortable. Okay. But it's great quality. Hold it up. I would hold it up.
I'll hold it.
Can they fix the seat or not? How does tell them how they get it?
Well, hold on. I didn't tell them about the 3 customizable sound profiles, like the earbud tap function that I use all the time, and awareness mode, which I love too. So since school is back in session, which means Raycon is having their annual back to school sale, for a limited time, only go to buyraycon.com/Howie Mandel Does Stuff today to get 20% off site-wide.
That's Buy Raycon. Oh, now I can't even read the mic.
Plus free shipping. That's buyraycon.com/Howie Does Stuff, not Howie Mandel.
Right.
Howie does Stuff.
Howie Does Stuff.
To score 20% off. Buyraycon.com/Howie Does Stuff.
Kenny, fix my chair. Kenny, come in and fix my chair.
And when you come here, and in '68 summer of
you
60,
came out of the Detroit riots.
We came out of the Detroit riots when Martin Luther King was assassinated. That city got lit up like a Christmas tree, as did 100 other cities around the country. I mean, it was insane. It was curfew. Like, if you're on the street after dark, you will be shot and killed, no questions asked. So I'm so blessed and so fortunate. Education is everything, right? So my mother, the game changer was my mother getting into UCLA. The game changer was, there was a professor there, I believe also Arthur Klein. There was a professor at UCLA, and my mom met with him, and he said, I'm gonna get you into the film school. And he did. And that changed the trajectory of our lives, that she got into that film school, because education opens doors. And that's why I'm a big believer that we have to make sure everybody in this country gets access to the best and the greatest education, because it just makes us all better. But I'm just so blessed because
that isn't what is happening in America.
No, that's not what's happening. But that's what I saw it firsthand. I mean, nobody's betting on a little black teenage girl with a little black baby to go anywhere. No, I mean, absolutely nowhere. And so,
it doesn't seem to be any easier today than it was when she came.
No, it's not. It's not easier. If anything, it's harder.
It's harder?
I think so. I mean, because it's like, people aren't. We're crushing people out here. We're not positioning people to succeed. We're positioning people to fail.
What do you mean?
We're in first order of business. Make sure everybody gets a great education. Period. Great education. A lot of what we see that's not right in our society, symptoms of not making sure people have a proper education and real economic inclusion. if you bring balance to the ecosystem, then you won't have a lot of these issues. What I say to America, please stop talking about crime until you lean in and invest and fix education and provide real economic inclusion. And when we make sure everyone is properly educated and has real economic inclusion, the crime will go down dramatically. And you won't need to use your prisons to warehouse human beings. You'll use it for, boxes and fulfillment centers, as they should be, not to warehouse human beings like wild animals. You have to prepare, you have to position everyone to succeed. And we don't do that. You can just look at the test scores. You can look at how little we invest in education.
Why are the test scores in, my daughter I wish she was here, but she taught with the LAUSD, and she taught in the inner city. Why we're all born with the equal capacity. Mm-hmm. We're not born with the equal environment.
Right.
Why are the test scores different in like the inner city or in?
We're not investing. We're just not investing. We're not positioning people to succeed. And it doesn't work anymore, right? The way we've been doing it. Right. America is a small little village. It's a small little tribe. We're only about 330 million people out of a global population of 8 billion. So we have to make sure that everybody is positioned to be their best. Because if you are your best, we are our best. So we just don't do it. And that's just the way our society is built, and we have to reinvent ourselves. The way we did it 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it doesn't work anymore. And we have to make sure we invest more in mastering STEM. Whoever is the leader in STEM will be the leader overall.
Science, technology,
engineering, and mathematics. You have to.
That's China right now. Right?
We do not have enough intellectual capital in the air. Just mastering STEM. We must always be the leader in STEM as a matter of national security, as a matter of our place in this world. We have to make sure that we are recruiting kids and positioning for them to do it. It's interesting because it's like, Maui. You and I love Maui. And
I should just say, you live there. You've invested in a beautiful home in Maui.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I've been going there since I was 18. And since 1979, I love Maui. I'm heartbroken by what's going on and what's happened. And I happen to also own the ABC affiliate there.
Right.
So, I love Maui. And, you and I have spent quite a bit of time there, and you've been to my house for dinner with your beautiful family. And before I bought my house, I used to always stay at a hotel there. And they have, these cabanas, and these cabanas are hard to come by, and people get up at 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning to get these cabanas. And every year, the same families would go to, the hotel. And, I got to know a lot of the families very well, because after years and years of just sitting around for 2 or 3 weeks next to them in a cabana, a lot of great conversations, and developed a lot of great friends. And it was there that I really, between my mother and just the interactions with the folks there, I will never forget, there was a woman who I got to know, and her husband, and I really first started talking because I noticed he had markings on his arms. And he was a victim of the Holocaust, and he had, the markings, the numbers on his arm. And we got to talking. And then one year she said to me, I almost didn't make it back to Maui, make it back here to hang out with you. And I go, why? What happened? And she said, she goes, I was having a problem with my heart, and no one wanted to operate on this little old lady. They were afraid that I was going to die on the operation table. And so no one would deal with me. And so we were just pretty much wrapping it up. And I go, what happened? And she goes, my son said, well, Mom, why don't you call Mike? And she goes, little Mikey? who I used to make cookies and milk for when he was like a little boy? Yeah, well, he's not a little boy anymore, Mom. He's now one of the leading heart surgeons in the world. And he's at such and such university. She said, I don't want to bother. So she said, no. I don't think you're bothering him. Call him up. And so she calls up. Hi, little Mikey. Remember me? I'm Mrs. Weissman. I used to make you cookies and milk. She said, of course I remember you. She goes, well, I have a little problem with my heart. I don't want to bother you, but nobody wants to operate on me and things aren't looking very good. And he said, send me your records immediately. And she did. And he called back immediately. And he said, I've looked at your records. Please get on the next plane. I'm going to perform surgery on you tomorrow. And she lived. And he added years to her life.
Right.
And that had that epiphany right there. And it was like, wow, thank God little Mikey was positioned to succeed. Thank God the wheels didn't come off the bus on him. Thank God he didn't become some crackhead or something. Like, they invested in him. And he was there to invest in us, to save us. I look at all these kids out here and I'm like, you're probably the cure to the disease that's going to kill me. I need you educated. I need you engaged. I need you being your best. That's what makes us stronger. That's what makes us invincible, when everybody's at their best.
And they make it hard to get in.
That's it.
I mean, you're not saying anything that doesn't make sense, but it's so hard. And I think we do that to ourselves too,
Yes.
in as far as, parents now, you got to get into Harvard. Well, do you have to get into Harvard?
Right.
Do you need that? And it's so expensive, even
Right.
for people who come from.
I think education should be free all the way through your PhD. I don't think anybody should be paying 1 penny for education, and for the very best education. We need the intellectual capital. It's a matter of national security. Like, you're not.
Is anything leaning that way now? Is anybody?
No.
Are you just
No,
alone in this
I mean,
echo chamber?
I mean, no, I think that, I think as business people, I think we as Americans, we are phenomenal. We are phenomenal entrepreneurs. When it comes to making money and building brands, we are ferocious beasts. Hard to beat us. But the one area we haven't made a business, education.
And that's what China does.
We need to make education in this country a business. Like, we invest in it because it's the human capital that takes us to the next level. When we had the pandemic, I have close to 2,300 employees. I didn't lay one person off. Not one. Now, all my competitors, they were laying off 30, 40, whatever % of their workforce. I said, human capital. Human capital is as valuable, if not more so, than capital. I have to keep my people.
But you could afford to. Not everybody could afford to.
You make other changes. You do other things. I'm keeping them. I'll figure it out. You don't print money. You shift it. You get creative. That's part of why.
Do you think making money is easy? I've heard you say that.
Yeah, yeah. Listen, we're in a country that has over $80 trillion floating around, looking for a safe place to invest and get returned, back to the investor with a proper return. There's no shortage of capital. We have lots of capital out there. If you have good deals and you have great skill set to protect and shepherd that capital. So I think there's plenty of capital out there. And I think for me, it was something, once again, going back to my childhood, watching my mother worry about money, watching my mother cry herself to sleep, worried about money, putting food on the table, keeping a roof over our house, over our heads. I was worried about losing my mother. I was worried about losing my mother at a very young age. I remember being worried that she was going to have to give me up for adoption or foster care because she couldn't afford to keep me.
Right.
So I'm 7 years old, I'm 8 years old, I'm 9 years old, and I'm watching my mother struggle. So I knew to keep my mother, I had to learn how to make money and not be a financial burden to my mother. So at a very young age, I learned how to make money quickly. So I remember going to the supermarket, Ralph's supermarket, and asking them, I was a kid, 10 years old or whatever it was, can I bag groceries? And they said, how old are you? I'm like 9, 10 years old. And they said, no, you're too young to work here. And I remember seeing this kid who was a teenager, and he was putting groceries in the bag, and I saw him put eggs at the bottom of the bag. And I said, well, I may not be old enough, but I know not to put the eggs at the bottom of the bag. And he said, I'm sorry, you can't have a job. And so I walked out. And as I was walking out of the grocery store, I saw this woman walking in with a basket. And I saw her put it in a machine and get a stamp, one stamp. And I said, ma'am, what is that machine? And she said, well, if you put a basket in the machine, you get a stamp. And if you get 100 stamps, you can get $1 worth of food. And so I gave myself my first business. I started collecting grocery baskets in the parking lot of Ralph's Market and started putting baskets, in the machine. And then I would come home with food from my mother. Wow. So I had to learn early on how to keep my mother, how to make money. I made that connection early on. So I was like, okay, we will always understand money, capital, the flow of it, and how to make it. And I was always fascinated as a kid, being from Detroit, by the great industrialist. I was fascinated by Henry Ford and Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller and Berry Gordy. So Berry Gordy's down the street doing Motown.
Right.
And here's Henry Ford, and my dad worked at Ford Motor Company for 30-something years and never called in a day sick.
I'm fascinated by those guys too, and they were entrepreneurial, but they had a more than we do today in industry, a sense of community. I feel like Ford was I come from Toronto, which is just across the river from Detroit, and I was aware that if you worked for families worked for Fords,
Yes.
it was generational.
That's right.
And if you could get on that assembly line,
That's
he
right.
was paying really well. Not only was he paying well
That's right.
to work in the factory, but even after retirement, you had all the best benefits. And I thought, and I was kind of aware that the people that worked at Ford had such pride in working at Ford. Not only did they have pride about their job, they had pride about their product. And I felt like everybody who worked in Detroit and worked at Ford bought Fords, and they were driving Ford. But think about that versus today's you could go work at a company, but they'll pay you below minimum wage. So you can't even afford to buy the products from the place you work from. So there's no sense of entrepreneurial community.
That's right.
Those people, like you talked about, keeping over COVID, will bend over backwards and help you create good product for whatever it is, your broadcast networks, your scripts, whatever it is that you happen to be doing in your company. I don't feel like that exists anymore. I think that the top head office is making
I'm in a unique place. I started my company from my dining room table 30 years ago this summer. Summer of 93. That's when I started.
Entertainment Studios.
Right. 30 years ago. And I don't have a board of directors. I own the company 100%. Not by design. I just couldn't find an investor. So I just kept building brick by brick by brick. And then it got to the scale and it was like, whoa, real sweat equity. I couldn't they were turning my phones off. So I couldn't raise a nickel and I ended up owning the company 100%. No board of directors, no analysis paralysis. I'm able to sit there and make that decision, people before profits. Now, most publicly traded companies can't make that decision.
But you also took risks that other people wouldn't take. I mean, I love this story about like Eddie Murphy, his special. That's a great story, but it took balls to do what you did. All right, we're in a commercial. Again, you fixed my chair, Kenny. Look what you did to hers. Can you see good? Are you comfortable?
No, I can't see at all.
Well, this
Can they
is
see
for
me?
the Butcher Box. Butcher Box is our sponsor on this commercial, and Butcher Box is great because I know that you just got a delivery of it. You love.
I just got my Butcher Box and I'm so excited because I don't have to take my kids shopping, which I dread. And the meat, the high quality meat, just comes right to my door. So it's great. And I get to cook high quality meals for my kids with my high quality meat, and they love it. And it's amazing.
Speaking of high quality, I would love a high quality chair adjustment for my daughter here, Kenny.
I'm okay. I'm
But
relaxing.
anyway, we actually love it. We're not just selling it. We love it. And it's a whole Butcher Box experience. Okay? How do you get your Butcher Box? They got a special deal. To sign up today at butcherbox.com/Howie and use the code Howie to get 2 100% grass-fed filet mignons and 2 wild-caught lobster tails for free in your first box, plus $20 off your first order. Save $60 on 2 of our highest quality cuts and save the legwork with our doorstep delivery. This is an exclusive offer just for my people until until September 6th. So go to butcherbox.com/Howie and use code Howie to claim this deal today. One more time, that's butcherbox.com/Howie and use the code Howie. This is an amazing offer.
I want the lobster tails.
I want a better seat adjustment for my daughter. Kenny!
Right. You know, I had started a DVD company to sell DVDs back when people were buying
Pre-Netflix.
Pre-Netflix. Well, Netflix was DVDs at the beginning, right? So I was, and Eddie and I are buddies going back to when we were 18, 19 years old. And so Eddie, this is before the internet, Eddie heard about this young black comic in LA, and I heard about this young black comic in New York. But that was it. And we heard about it because of the comics and the doormen and the managers that would come from New York to LA or LA to New York. And they say, oh, there's this guy. So I always heard about him. And I got a call from Jim McCauley of The Tonight Show.
He was the guy who booked all the comics on The Tonight Show.
You're right. And he said, there's this guy from Saturday Night Live, and he's coming out here to do The Tonight Show, and he would like to meet you. Are you willing to meet him? And I go, what's his name? He goes, Eddie Murphy. I go, absolutely. I've heard about Eddie for years. You know, we've been in the club since we were 14, 15. I think he came in 15, 16. We've heard about each other for 3-4 years. Absolutely. So he goes, he'll be at the Comedy Store tonight. So I go to the Comedy Store, and Eddie's at the one end of the hall. He's down there by the main room. And I was over by the original room. So it was like at the end of the hall. It was like out of a Western.
Right.
and so he just kind of nods at me like this, like we've known each other all our lives. And I nod back, and he walks up to me. He goes, what's up? I go, what's up? What you want to do? You want to go get something to eat? He goes, yeah, let's go get something to eat. It was like we had been like raised together in the same neighborhood all
Without
around.
ever meeting.
Without ever meeting. It was like, hey, what's up? What's up? You want to go get something to eat? Let's go get something to eat. So we go to my car, and I had a beige 4-door Honda, and Eddie was not impressed. So he looks at my car. He goes, is this your car? I go, yeah, this is my car. He goes, he looks at it, and then he goes, do you have kids? I go, no, I don't have any kids. He goes, why do you have a back seat? I said, well, it came with the car. He goes, I just bought a 280ZX. He goes, you know what I did with the back seat? I go, no. He goes, I took the back seat out, and it's a giant speaker. He goes, so when I'm driving down the street, people hear me thumping. I go, oh, that's a good idea. He goes, yeah, get rid of your back seat. Put in a speaker. Right? I go, okay, I'll think about that. So we go.
In a beige Honda.
In a beige 4-door Honda. He didn't want to be seen in this car, and I don't think he's ever been seen in a car like this before, ever again. So we go to the restaurant, the Mustache Cafe, across from the Improv, and we're sitting there, and we're talking about comedy, and we're talking about, everything. And then Eddie says, I said, so what brings you to L.A.? I thought it was to do the Tonight Show. She goes, no, it's not tonight. He goes, I'm out here to do a fitting for a movie. I go, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, I play a convict. He goes, but I don't, he goes, I don't wear convict clothes. He goes, I wear really nice clothes. He goes, I don't look like a convict. He goes, I look sharp. He goes, I'm out here to do a fitting. He goes, have you ever heard of Giorgio Armani? And I go, no. He goes, he's an Italian designer, and they're going to put me in Giorgio Armani suits, and I'm going to look real good. He goes, I play this guy to get me out of prison for 48 hours, and I go capture a bad guy. He goes, so here's the deal. He said, this is my first movie. He goes, if it doesn't work, we're going to blame the movie on my co-star, some guy named Nick Nolte. He says, but if the movie does work, I'm going to take all the credit. And he goes by. He goes, so I started talking about how much I love TV and I love television. And I want to do more in television. He's like, oh, forget TV. He goes, be in the movie business. He goes, the movie business is the greatest business in the world. He goes, when I landed, Byron, they gave me an envelope. And in that envelope, and oh, by the way, he said, I'm keeping the suits. He goes, I'm not giving the suits back. He goes, but in this envelope was per diem. I go, per diem? He goes, yeah, it's cash, just to spend cash. He goes, $1,500. He goes, I opened the envelope, I looked around, he goes, I'm keeping this cash. So Eddie was like, straight up, just do movies, right? So I remember we were in his kitchen, and this is the house that he bought from Cher. Cher had this beautiful home on Benedict Canyon, and Eddie bought it. He walked in and literally said, how much? The time was 30 years ago, whatever, 40. He goes, $5.5 million. He goes, okay. He was staying at a hotel.
Right.
He said, okay, we're good. Like he literally, they
Just
had
bought
to,
it.
no, you have to go back to the hotel. You can't stay now. Like he didn't want to leave, right?
Oh, he thought he just bought it and that's it.
Like, I'm good. $5.5 million, we're good. I'm going to stay here now, right? They're like, no, you got to go to the hotel and do the paperwork and wire the money, right? So we're in his kitchen, and I said, I started this DVD company. And I said, what do you own? He said, only thing I own is my stand-up where I'm in a red leather outfit. I go, that's it? He goes, yeah, red leather outfit. I did it for HBO, and they gave me 50 grand.
Raw.
No, that was Delirious.
Delirious.
And I said, I'd like to put it out on DVD. So he says, okay, call my lawyers. So I called the lawyers, and I said, Eddie and I were in his kitchen last night. I told him I wanted to put, Delirious out on DVD. And I said, you have any offers? He goes, yeah, we have an offer from Lionsgate for $750,000. And I said, well, how much money would I have to pay you to get the rights to put this on DVD? And you don't go with Lionsgate for $750,000. And the lawyer says $1.1 million.
Just out of the
just
blue.
like he just laid it on me. $1.1 million, $350,000 more than Lionsgate. And I said, and I kind of paused. I said, if I give you $1.1 million, can I get the rights to put it on DVD? And then he was like, whoa, because I think he thought the number was going to scare me.
Right.
And then he says to me, $1.1 million up front. Like, you wire me the money day one. This is what the lawyer says. I said, if I give you $1.1 million up front day one, are we good? He goes, yeah. It was like that. I said, okay, we have a deal. I'll give you $1.1 million up front. And so I did not have two nickels to rub together at that time. And so I went to the manufacturer of the DVDs, who manufactures DVDs, and I said, I got a big order for you. I'm going to order a lot of DVDs. I said, I just got the rights to Eddie Murphy's Delirious. And they went, whoa. I go, yeah, we're going to sell a lot of DVDs. Great. I said, I just need one thing from you. He goes, what's that? I said, I need you to send me $1.1 million today. So the guy goes, whoa, okay. And I convinced the guy to send me $1.1 million as an advance for the orders for the DVDs. So I wire the money to Eddie. And and then my salespeople go to sell the DVDs. And my salesperson called me back right after I wired the money and said, I got bad news for you. Really bad news for you. I go, what? Because I cannot afford bad news. He goes, Walmart only wants to put Eddie in the black stores, the black zip codes. Stores in the black zip codes. Like out of 4,000 stores, they only want to put him in 400 of them. And I went, are you serious?
What white people don't know Eddie Murphy?
That's exactly what I said. I said, white people love Eddie Murphy. What are we talking
Probably
about?
more white people from SNL.
40, Saturday Night Live, 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop. I'm like, are you serious? You know, literally, we're just going to do 400 stores out of 4,000? Yep. So I said, all right. A buddy of mine happened to be on the board of Walmart, Chris Williams.
Right.
And I said, Chris, I need your help. I just wired Eddie Murphy $1.1 million that I don't have. And I said, Walmart, the biggest seller of DVDs, just pretty much shut me down. And this thing's about to crash and burn. And I need Eddie Murphy in all stores, not just the stores in the black zip codes. And he said, hold on. And I hear him typing, blah, blah, blah. He says, don't worry, I got it. I got a call just less than an hour later. And the guy says, oh, one of our board members, she said we should connect, blah, blah, blah. No problem. And they put the DVD in all stores. And it ended up being the biggest selling DVD at Walmart that wasn't a theatrical motion picture. It couldn't stay on the shelf. It just kept flying off the shelf. We brought in tens of millions of dollars just at Walmart.
Wow.
On that DVD.
Wow.
That he got paid $50,000 to do just 10 years earlier.
But he got the 1.1 and then you
kept sending money.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
He had a back end.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you kidding me? Yeah. You kidding me? Absolutely. It was a very nice, it was a great deal for Eddie. It was a great deal for us. But let me tell you, there was that moment.
That scary moment.
Oh, that scary moment.
You have had a lot of scary moments that have a tinge of racism attached, as far as that they wanted to put it in just a black, like I don't know why they saw it like that. It was an SNL star.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking Shrek, Beverly Hills Cop. I mean,
right. So it didn't make sense.
The biggest comedian in the world, and then and movie star.
And you also had a huge, which I think is over, right? Didn't you have the $1 billion lawsuit?
Yeah. All that's over. That's all behind us. I wanted to get the conversation really on track, right? To start talking about that.
About inclusivity?
Absolutely. I just felt like...
I was reading, is there a McDonald's suit now?
Yeah, there's a McDonald's. At the end of the day, I'm a firm believer, if we bring balance to the system will be much better for all.
So what's the McDonald's thing?
The McDonald's thing was really simple. I said, hey, with the Black Lives Matter movement, what I found appalling were all of these corporations saying, yeah, we believe in DE&I. We believe in DE&I. And that's great that you say that. But DE&I are 3 letters you cannot deposit in any bank. It's good if you want to put them in alphabet soup, but you cannot deposit those 3 letters in any bank. And when folks are standing there and declaring this false narrative, I'm like, well, let's have a numerical conversation. Let's speak numerically. That's my favorite language. I don't care about the words. I don't care about the soap opera. Forget the soap opera. Let's speak numerically. That's how you build your business, and that's how you build wealth.
Right.
It's numbers.
Right.
Not blah,
Facts.
blah, blah, soap opera. What are the numbers? And I was really impacted by the murder of Martin Luther King. And I made it a point to get to know his widow, Coretta Scott King. And she was the true queen of America. She's the one who really was an amazing force in the civil rights movement. She's the one who said to Martin Luther King, we need strategy. We need to be better at strategy. And she says, as a matter of fact, I want you to sit down and talk to this guy named Bayard Rustin. And Martin's like, Bayard Rustin? She said, yeah, he's brilliant. He's black. He happens to be gay. And he happens to be a communist. Wow. And Martin said, he's gay? Like, he didn't even hear a communist. He's like, Martin's like, he's gay. It's like that, right?
Right.
And Coretta Scott King in 1958, 59 said, yeah, Martin, he's gay. And who do you think we're fighting for when we fight for civil rights? We're fighting for civil rights for all people, not just black people and white people, including gay people. So I need you to sit down with him, with all your Southern Baptist ministers, and listen to this brilliant man so we can come up with strategy. And he said, okay, Coretta. And he did. And he sat down with him. And Bayard had just come back from Paris. And he walked in and he laid it out who he was. And then he laid out the strategy for the Montgomery bus boycott.
Wow.
And he said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stop with the words and the chanting. It's money. We're going to bankrupt them. If they don't respect us, we're going to knock us in on the back of the bus. The man basically created ride sharing and Uber before it was Uber, because everybody had to figure out how to get to point A to point B without using the bus. Wow. And it was that. And Coretta said to me, we knew if we could break the South, we could break everything. If we could break Montgomery, we could break the South, and we could open up and get civil rights achieved. That was Coretta. Coretta was brilliant, the true queen. She's the one who made Martin Luther King's birthday a national holiday. The only American to have his birthday as a national holiday. The only one. She's the one who raised millions of dollars for the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolent Change. She's the one who investigated his true murder and who actually did it. And I'm making a movie about that. And she's the one who said to me, Byron, as black people in this country, we had 4 major challenges. Number 1, end slavery. Nobody's had to deal with that in America other than us. Number 2, end Jim Crow. And I think Jim Crow was more damaging than slavery.
Really?
Yeah, because when we were slaves, we were assets. So they protected us, right? For the most part. When we became free, then we were considered competition and we became a liability. And that's when the genocide kicked in. That's when the lynchings kicked in. That's when the, burning us, incarcerating us, because you're free and you're competing with us. I mean, what was slavery all about? It was always about money. I brought you here from Africa to make us rich, not to compete. I brought you here to make us wealthy. Oh, you're free now. Now I have to compete against you. Let the genocide begin. And that's why you have all the lynchings and the incarceration and all the murders, because it was always about money. America could never, it's mathematically impossible for America to become as wealthy as America is without slave labor and close to 300 years of it, right?
Right.
We built it together, but as black people, we just never got paid. And so then she said, the real reason they killed my Martin, economic inclusion. Right? So third one was civil rights. The third one was to achieve civil rights, which is what they did by the time he was 39 years old. And then she said, in the fourth one was economic inclusion. And she said, Byron, they didn't kill my Martin over the I have a dream speech. They killed him over the speech he gave in February of '68 at Stanford University, The Other America. And in that speech, he said there are two Americas. One America has access to opportunity, education, economic inclusion, jobs. The other America doesn't. There are two Americas, and two Americas will not survive. We must achieve one America, or America will fall apart. This is what the great Martin Luther King Jr. taught us well over 50 years ago. And they killed him 4 months later, April of '68. He was pushing for economic inclusion, mainly for poor white Americans. And they were like, you're out. You're out. And so when she taught me that and showed me that, from that moment on, I saw myself differently. And I said, I am going to build one of the world's biggest media companies, if not the biggest, the world's biggest media company, because media is powerful. Media, we control what you read, what you hear, what you see, which ultimately impacts the way you think and act. Media can be weaponized. Media can be weaponized in a way where you can have white men in this country so wound up that they go to the Capitol and try and overthrow a country that they already control. That's media. That's misinformation. Now, you can use media to divide, or you can use media to unite. I'm here to unite us. I'm here to stop the dividing of us, the division. So what does one America look like to me? I call it the 5 E's. Make sure everybody has a great education. Everybody. I need every kid to succeed, every human being. Make sure everybody has equal justice. We know what it looks like when we don't. Make sure everybody has economic inclusion. That imbalance is the reason why we are, all suffering from crime. Make sure everybody has environmental protection. That's the fourth one. You see what's happening in the environment. I think the debate is over. Don't debate it. We're losing 5 million people per year to climate change and global warming. And that fifth E is empathy. Make sure that we lean in, address and support people dealing with mental illness, food insecurity, and homelessness. And if we lean in on those 5 things, we can have a slice of heaven right here on earth. Wow. But if we continue to ignore that and have this imbalance, none of us will survive. So I am not just building a company to make money. I'm building a company to make us all better, to achieve that fourth and final chapter that Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King dedicated their lives to. So one America.
So when you go outside of your company and this started with McDonald's.
Yes. So what I said to McDonald's is, in corporate America, the greatest trade deficit in America is the trade deficit between white corporate America and black America.
Right.
And if we don't close that trade deficit, we can't have one America. And you have this divide. When I see kids running out of malls with, bags made in China, I'm seeing us fail and not providing them the proper education. There's no excuse for what they're doing. It's wrong. Let's not even go there. It's wrong. But we aren't doing the right thing. What we're doing is,
well, that's a result of a problem.
That's a result of,
That's not the problem.
That's right. That's a result of a problem. We are crushing people in the schoolroom We're crushing people in the courtroom, and we're crushing people in the boardroom long before you see the issues in the street.
But why McDonald's?
McDonald's. So I said to McDonald's, listen up. You're doing $100 billion a year in revenue. $100 billion. You're pulling about $40 billion a year out of the black community. You're spending about $1 billion a year in advertising. Less than $5 million is going to black-owned media, not to be confused with targeted. And we, as black-owned media, cannot survive with that disparity. And McDonald's, there's some serious issues there. It isn't just me. McDonald's has been sued multiple times, 2 of them that I'm aware of, by the black franchisees who have said, hey, why do you just keep putting me in the black neighborhood? They've been sued by the black executives. They've been sued by the black store employees. They've been sued by the head of global security, who spoke at a town hall meeting and said to Chris Kempczynski, the CEO of McDonald's, I'm very disappointed about your racist text messages. Chris Kempczynski sent some racist text messages to the mayor of Chicago, and he got caught. And he went on an apology tour. And as a part of his apology tour for getting caught sending these racist text messages about black and Latino families, he did a town hall with his employees. And the head of global security, a black man, said, I was very disappointed by your racist text messages. And that man was fired after 20 years. So he too sued McDonald's. And then if that wasn't enough, an unprecedented vote came down that none of these lawsuits have anything to do with me. This is the culture at McDonald's. 55% of the stockholders at McDonald's, 55%, mainly white people, voted to hire a third-party firm to investigate McDonald's for civil rights violations. That is unheard of. I'm 62 years old. I've studied a lot about business. I love business. I have never seen that in my life, where 55% of your stockholders have said, mainly white people, there's some problems here. We need to hire a third-party firm to investigate civil rights and violations at this company. And then fast forward, I don't know if you saw in the New York Post this whole expose. The BBC uncovered over 100 people in the UK. Unbelievable violations, sexual harassment, sexual assault, racism, racial slurs, all of this cover up. And it's like at a certain point, hey,
but that's our culture as opposed to
that's our culture.
That one company. That's what is happening absolutely everywhere. But as a company, I think you give yourself responsibility to try to change the culture.
Absolutely. So I said, here's a $10 billion lawsuit. And the judge said the case can go forward.
$10 billion?
$10 billion. $10 billion. You're a $100 billion company. You're 200, whatever it is. $10 billion. Now get to the table and correct that deficit and eradicate this culture. This board of directors of McDonald's needs to be fired, all of them, because this is the same board for the most part that had the previous CEO major issues with sexual harassment to the point where they fired him and then tried to claw back his compensation.
But if you personally are suing for $10 billion, what is the... Don't you have to show what the damages are specifically to you?
Yeah, exactly. The years they didn't do business with us and the money they didn't spend. I mean, it's insane. And I'm like, and by the way, it's like, there's not just me. There's so many others where it's black-owned media and McDonald's isn't spending a nickel with them. And I just say, look, it's time to stop the misinformation,
or bring it to the forefront,
and I'm just putting a light on it. And that's what Coretta Scott King said to me. I said to her, you and Martin have done a phenomenal job. It's for us to deal with the fourth and final chapter. economic inclusion for everyone.
You have become a lightning rod and a spokesperson and an educator for this. Even you're very busy and I'm very busy. I don't get to spend a lot of time with you, but in the short little spurts that we spend together, I end up going home and talking to my wife. I learned so much. You spoke. Was it at Harvard? You did that.
I spoke at Harvard. Yeah, and I want to talk about that. So the one thing Coretta said to me, she said, Byron, our greatest weapon is the truth. If we bring the truth, we will always win. Now think about that. I filed a $10 billion lawsuit against McDonald's, and it didn't get dismissed because I brought the truth. And you
did the same against
everybody.
Yeah.
And I just said, now let's deal with the truth. Let's look at the numbers. Jay-Z said it best. Men and women lie, numbers don't.
Right.
Right? The numbers don't lie. Let's get the numbers right. So that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing the truth.
Harvard speech was...
Well, yeah, I went to Harvard. And I wanted to speak I went to the business school, and it was for the black business students at Harvard. And they asked me to speak, and I said, I'm going to do that. Because
Wait, just for the black business students? You weren't. I thought you were just speaking at Harvard for I didn't know that it was.
Well, a lot of the white kids came too, but it was the black kids who said, "Come see me."
Okay.
Right. So I go, and I really wanted to be clear about a number of things. I was, very upset and very concerned about the anti-Semitism that I was seeing consistently, and I said, okay, I need people to understand what's going on. People need to understand how dangerous this is, how wrong it is, and what's really happening. And I said, look, you have to understand, in 1916, there was a book that was written. And it was written by a young man by the name of Madison Grant. And he went to Columbia Law School. And he's in New York. He's upset. The book is called The Passing of the Great Race. Keep America White and Pure. This is the book he writes, 1916. And he was upset about the immigration into America, in particular through New York, which is where he was. Upset about the Jews coming in from Europe, the whole 9 yards, and he's just like, shut it down. And this book takes off. This book becomes it really takes off.
A bestseller.
Oh, it starts changing laws, the whole 9 yards. And this young man read this book. And a young man read this book and said, this is the greatest book I've ever read. This book is my Bible. And that young man in 1916 was Adolf Hitler.
Shit.
So Adolf Hitler reads this book, and he's like, this is the blueprint. So not only did we create this racism and anti-Semitism, we exported it all the way to Europe.
And inspired
all the way to Europe, and it came back as the Holocaust. So Adolf Hitler gave an interview to the New York Times, and Adolf Hitler said, hey, I do not understand why America is giving me such pushback, because everything I've learned about immigration control, I've learned from America. Adolf Hitler actually said, I thought America would become my partner.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
So this is why Adolf Hitler sent his Nazi lawyers to America and said, study the Jim Crow laws that they're using on the Negroes and come back and use them on the Jews. He studied everything we did to create his evil acts. He got the blueprint from us. So when I look at that, I say, we have to come back and step back and look at who we really are. We are who we are, but now we have to decode the system And we have to reverse this coding so we can be better and go forward. So what I was saying to the students at Harvard was that there's no scenario in which you should discriminate against anyone, especially the Jews, because they're suffering the same way we are. And oh, by the way, there's a huge debt of gratitude that we've never acknowledged, because the Jews stood next to us during the civil rights movement and all throughout a number of struggles, and has donated a lot of money and intellectual capital and leverage to help us move forward. And we never said thank you. We never said, I see you. I appreciate you. You've been there for us. Thank you. We have suffered from the same ideologies. We are one. So I wanted to say to those kids, the Jews, what are your problems? What's your problem there? Let me help you with this one. That's family. You're looking at this all wrong. That's family. You have to have their back the way they've had our back, and we have to be one.
You, Byron, not only share facts and great historical lessons that we should learn from and be better because of, but you're also, and that's I think that was your last E, was empathy. Because in talking about this, when we were talking, we were in the storm of somebody like Kanye.
Yes.
Who was not helping our community or yours.
No.
But your view on it was incredibly surprising and wonderful and eye-opening, and that was empathetic, that this is a man with a mental health issue.
Yeah. I mean, everything he said is wrong and horrible. In my humble opinion, he's completely mentally ill and needs help. That's just mental. And
we're not helping, we're exploiting.
Yeah. And listen, when he said slavery, whatever it was a choice for black people and good for black people, whatever it was, come on, man, shut that down. And that is one of the greatest epidemics we have in this country, I believe. People who need help, mental help. If you look at the top of the news, that's you. If it's not weather, then it's a mental health breakdown. Someone stabbing someone, shooting someone, going down the street, saying horrible racist things. Those are all mental health issues.
I agree.
And it's one of the greatest epidemics we have in this country that we don't address. And there's a stigma attached to addressing it. If you walk outside and break your leg, you will be on a gurney and in a hospital probably within 20 minutes, 30 minutes on a bad day.
Right.
That's how the system is built. If you walk outside and start talking and screaming at yourself, you will do that for 10, 20 years until you starve to death in front of millions of people just walking right by you that act like they don't see you.
That's incredibly sad.
And that's incredibly sad. So if your body is bleeding, we got you. If your mind is bleeding, we don't see you. And a lot of what you're experiencing, it's just mental health breakdown. It's an epidemic. And that's the empathy. You have to address the homeless, the food insecure, and the mental health crisis. That's it.
I traditionally, this podcast is, for the most part, silly, fun, and an escape. But I wanted you here because I have incredible respect for you. I'm in awe of the journey that you've been on and who you've become as a human being and as a businessman. And I'm talking to the people who are listening and watching right now and will hopefully listen. I think you need to share this episode with a lot of people because some of the things I heard today are new and fresh to me and incredibly important. Some of what you said we've talked about before, and I just want everybody to hear your words, and because and not only hear these words, But let's all, as a society, try to do whatever little bit we can to act on these words, because you can hear it and you can go, oh shit, fuck, we're fucked. But we are fucked if you're not doing anything. If you're walking by these people that you just spoke of, if we're not aware of the inclusiveness of wherever it is that we're working and who we're working with, if we're not aware or we become aware and don't do anything about the unfairness and imbalance that there is in our everyday lives, and whether that's at our school, whether that's at our workplace, our office, or just in socially, I think we all have to, there was when after 9/11, people, that saying, see something, say something, but I think that you just heard something. I think we got to do something.
Yes.
We really all got to do. And you are creating an empire that hopefully will change, but this is like a slow fucking barge, like the Titanic heading to an iceberg.
Yes.
And as somebody who is a grandparent now, I live every day now worried about the future of, and not for my life. You and I live a really nice life. We are incredibly blessed, but we're on such a short train into a fucking brick wall.
Yes.
And unless more people act upon just a few of the things, and I can go on for hours and hours with you, because you are this vast, I don't know, you're a kind of an evolved human, and I love listening to you, and I feel better for it. And I hope that the people who are listening and watching this feel better for it. And maybe, if one little thing has changed, one little mind has changed, then I've done what I wanted to do today just by bringing you here. And you are welcome anytime. I love you, buddy.
I love you. I love you.
And I mean that. We say that, and that sounds very Hollywood, but I really love you. And the things that I'm not going to bring up publicly, but you've really helped me with my life and my family. And we work together, and we do a show together. He does a show called Funny You Should Ask, which people come up to me all the time and say it's really funny. But that's such a servicey thing compared to the things that you talk about at lunch, when we're there. And you do for the people that work for you. And if you look at these people that are behind the scenes you created a community. It's not a workplace, it's a community. And it is what I think he wants, McDonald's to kind of veer to, because it's not only about black and white. That he hires people who especially in this business, aged out, and the gender, age, whatever. They're all there, and you know what it is? And he's not doing it. It's not charity. These are people who are skilled and good. And I think that people who are skilled and good, and whether you're talking about racism or whatever, they're just shunned aside in our society anyway, just based on we judging a book by their cover, and you never do that. And you really practice what you preach. And very few people do. It's really easy to say nice things. It's not easy to be a nice person. So I love you, buddy.
That credit goes to my mother,
who I also know, and she is really wonderful. And that relationship that you've had your entire life is probably one of the most beautiful, strongest things. And she is, you talk about Claretta, but your mother is also equally a hero.
Yes.
And you are, and what you're doing are her legacy.
That's right.
So
listen, I just say, try and say yes. I would just say whatever you can, try and say yes. When the guy, Arthur said, yes, I'm going to look to get, you into UCLA Film School. And then someone said, yes, I'm going to let you work here for free at NBC. Those two yeses basically is the reason why I'm sitting here now.
Well, just my own personal philosophy. I always say to people, instinct is wonderful. And we should say yes to everything. And I say no is N-O, which are the first two letters in the word nothing. Nothing comes from no. Yes, at worst, you have an experience or a learning. You've taught yourself something that maybe informs the path that you take later. So yes is the most powerful thing we have. And when I asked you to come on and you said yes, nobody's more excited than me. And when you listen to this and you share it, yes is the answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
And subscribe. Byron Allen, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
That was good.
You said what?
I didn't talk. I mean, but that's the beauty of it. He is amazing.